Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this week, as always, are Eric Devine and Philip Bargil. Liga action returned after the international break, and it came back with a real bang. 5 games in, and French football is flying, and there's plenty to analyse this week from goals, or lack thereof, and goalkeeping gaffes. But before all that, here's Eric with all the news.
Thanks, Nathan. PSG continued their unbeaten start to the season, kicking off the weekend with a scintillating home draw against Bordeaux. Edinson Cavani's brace being cancelled by a goal from Wabi Kazri 12 minutes from time, as both goalkeepers will surely be looking over their shoulders. Henri Saivet was sent off in the first of more than a few dismissals in Ligue 1, having been sent off. Saturday's early match pitted Lyon against Lille in a scoreless draw, as Les Legons, despite hitting the woodwork twice, were unable to find the back of their net in their first match without Nabil Fekir. In the multiplex, there were considerably more goals, as away wins were the order of the day. Saint-Etienne went level on points with Reims in third, defeating Montpellier 2-1, as Georges Marveau's injury time goal, Montpellier's first of the season, wasn't enough to lift the hosts out of the drop zone. Guingamp defeated host Nice 1-0, and Caen, despite playing with more than half an hour with 10 men, managed to win 3-1 at Troyes. The lone home side to win on the day, Lorient, recorded a 3-1 win over Angers, their first of the season, with goals from Benjamin Jeannot, Majid Waris, and Jan Diouf cancelling out a Romain Sais's opener. In Toulouse, Frédéric Boulot's superb volley 10 minutes from time sealed a 2-2 draw, visiting Reims continuing their superb start. On Sunday, a penalty on 17 minutes for Fabinho was enough to claim all 3 points for visiting Monaco, as their win over Gazlet Ajaccio saw the hosts rooted to the bottom of the table. In the late afternoon kickoff, host Nantes were unable to overcome 2 straight red cards, one for Colman Sigthorsson and one for Adrien, as Rennes moved into second thanks to goals from Paul-Georges Antep and Giovanni Sio. The best, however, was perhaps saved for last, as Marseille romped to a 4-1 victory over Bastia at the Velodrome, with Romain Alessandrini having a brace, Benjamin Mendy's opener on 15 minutes perhaps the pick of the lot. In Ligue 2, Metz and Dijon recorded away wins to retain the 2 automatic promotion places, Les Grenats continuing their undefeated start and looking like favorites to bounce back up, while an additional 7 teams are within 3 points of third place. In injury news, both Gaëta Fofana and Nabil Fekir have successfully undergone surgery for Lyon, with club president Jean-Michel Aulas reporting that all is well. That's all the news for now. Back to you, Nathan.
Thanks, Eric. And for all your latest breaking news in the world of French football, head over to our website and follow us on Twitter. All the links are in the description. Also, if you can log in, because Twitter is down for PCs, it seems, at the moment for some people, feel free to get in touch with the show by heading to @TheGFFN Show and tweet us or use the hashtag #TheGFFN Show. Our first talking point this week centres around Paris Saint-Germain, who drew 2-2 against Bordeaux on Friday, and all the headlines went to their new goalkeeper, Kevin Trapp, for all the wrong reasons. He failed to deal with a corner for their first and gave the ball away for Bordeaux second. What went on, Philip?
He's been quite unlucky. It was so on a Friday night. It was on television, so basically, it's not like it was doing a multiplex live game Friday evening, and just two mistakes that were really not exactly predictable, because he's been really good with really calm when the defense got him the ball back. He didn't have much to do in his opening 4 games, but what he did have to do, he did it well. Most of the media and most of the people I've spoken to can forgive him for what he did, or was as a mistake he did on the first goal. I mean, he didn't see the ball arriving. The ball arrived fast. It bounced back off his chest and went in the back of the net. But the other goal was really a lot of people were really saying, okay, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. It's not like he miscontrolled the ball either. There was a pass back. He controls the ball. It's just that the Bordeaux player comes in and nicks the ball in front of him just before he clears it or passes it. So yeah, very very unlucky. And the worst part is this is PSG's first drop points of the season. It's been going on so well since the start that one might predict that PSG could go all the season undefeated. And this is really the type of games that they weren't winning last season, and they were expected to win this season, and they didn't. It's 2 points drop. I mean, obviously it's not the end of the world for PSG, but yeah, it's still 2 points against a Bordeaux side who have been very have been labelled as being quite defensive and cautious. So they'll be disappointed with that. Trapp will be quite disappointed with that.
Eric, what did you think to the two mistakes Trapp made in the game?
Yeah, I would concur with Nathan on the nature of them. Dawdling on the back pass, there's really not much of an excuse for that. Hazard's a fast player, obviously cutting in there to get the ball off him, but especially at that point in the game, being a man up with Saive having been sent off. I mean, there's no excuse, especially with how solid PSG are defensively in terms of their back four. Those are the first two goals PSG have conceded this season. There's no excuse to do that. But sort of expanding this a little bit, as impressive as Trapp has been thus far, he did have a couple fine saves. I'm thinking particularly of a save against Montpellier that allowed PSG to win that match 1-0. That was pretty impressive. But I'm not really sure what PSG's thinking is with the regards of signing Trapp. Obviously, Blanc feels that Salvador Sirigu wasn't being pushed enough by the likes of Duche last season. So he goes and signs this young keeper, exciting prospect, German under-21 international. But if Sirigu, who I believe is 30 or 31, is no longer seen as the goalkeeping future in Paris, why is Trapp being brought in when you already have Alphonse Areola on the books? He's on loan this season at Villarreal, but he's shown during his time at Bastia and so far this season with the Yellow Submarine that he's a really exciting young keeper. So, if you have these doubts about Trapp at present, I kind of feel like PSG are looking like they have a bit of egg on their face, being that they loaned out Areola again when I feel that he should have been allowed to stay and being given more of a chance to challenge Sirigu. And then beyond that, I mean, Sirigu, has been more than solid. He was, sort of an unheralded player, and now he's become, an Italian international. I mean, he's not starting obviously because of the presence of Buffon, but he's consistently being called up into the squad, and it's impressive to see how he's developed and flourished even. I mean, he's not, perhaps as adept as Trapp at making spectacular saves, but he's, a much more consistently solid goalkeeper. He's, fairly mistake-free, and I'm just a little bit baffled as to, if this is the type of thing that we're going to see from Trapp. And again, this isn't a high-pressure game. This isn't against Real Madrid. This isn't against, even a Shakhtar Donetsk or a Lyon, some of the more challenging teams that PSG are going to face this season. So if he's going to produce this kind of performance in a relatively low-pressure situation, it really sort of worries me going forward for the team.
I never quite got why this signing was made. Sirigu was extremely criticised last season for not being there on the big occasion. But he was extremely reliable when the defending was really not as good as it has been this season. I know it's only the fifth league game and the Champions League hasn't even started yet. But it was always a question of why is money being spent on a position that has already been consolidated by high quality players. Money could have been spent elsewhere, but he's still a very very good goalkeeper, but it just doesn't give the ranking of the goalkeepers isn't defined yet, and I don't think it will be until midway through the season. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what the signing meant really. And now Blanc has a bit of a problem, but he really shouldn't. I mean, before we mentioned that, he really shouldn't drop Trapp for tomorrow's game against Malmo, though. I mean,
All
that
right.
would be. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say my next question would have been, would it be Trapp or Sirigu starting in midweek?
It would be suicide from Blanc, and it would be completely inconsistent with the way he manages his players, because he got lots of players who have not been confident. Cavani was being the best example, and he scored a wonderful, a great free kick last Friday, and he just sticks with his players, and he tries to get their confidence level back. So I'm really pretty sure that he'll start. He'll do the same as he did last season. Is that Trapp will be the starter for the remainder of the season, unless he's injured, of course, and then Sirigu will play the Coupe de France games and so on. So I would be extremely disappointed if Blanc actually started Sirigu. It would really mean okay, the first guy who has a below par performance, he's on the bench. And that's the type of pressure that no club is even applying. Even the Manchester Uniteds, the Real Madrids, they don't have this type of pressure. So it would be, yeah.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Real Madrid. I mean, that's exactly what Real Madrid did last season. Playing
Really?
a different keeper for League and Cup games. I mean, we don't know what Blanc's intention is. Is his intention to use Sirigu in the Champions League and Trapp in the league because he feels the league's, perhaps a lower pressure situation? I would think so. I mean, Sirigu, I think, did pretty well in the Champions League.
Yeah, me
and
too.
there's less pressure on Trapp. I mean, okay, you draw against Bordeaux. It's not the end of the world. But if you make those gaps against Real Madrid or Shakhtar Donetsk, you're going to pay for them in a big way. Potentially by not advancing to the round of 16. So I would hope that Sirigu would be, whether it's a quote-unquote cup keeper, I would hope that he would be playing on a regular basis in the Champions League. This isn't an issue of confidence in terms of, Trapp's performances in the league. This is an issue of playing your experienced, established keeper that has Champions League experience in this competition.
So will it be though? Will it be though? Because if Trapp does start, let's say he starts tomorrow evening against Malmo, it'll be Blanc sticks to his guns. He wants to give Trapp his confidence back, and if Sirigu starts, so the main story will not be Sirigu starts because he's got more Champions League experience. It will be Trapp is punished for his mistake against Bordeaux and is not playing. In the short term, this is going to be the reaction, in my opinion, of course. But maybe Blanc wanted to play Sirigu in the Champions League all along since the start of the season, but he just didn't make that clear. So I just can't see how starting Sirigu would be good for Trapp or the group's confidence if that happens.
I think Eric makes an interesting point about that, and I think my follow-up question to you, Eric, would be: would you have started Sirigu in the Champions League regardless of Trapp's performance at the weekend?
Yes, I mean he's a more established, experienced keeper. Even though you're playing Malmo, the weakest team in the group. That being said, the fact that they are the weakest team in the group and they're going to be somewhat of a whipping boy, one would assume, looking at the way the group's set up. 3 points are essential tomorrow for PSG. A draw is not enough, and if you were to have a gaff that ends up in it being 1-1, for example, PSG I think would really rue that. It would probably rule out any chance of them getting first place in the group unless they were to get 4 points from Real Madrid, which I don't see happening. Pardon me. Yeah, I think Sirigu should be the starter for the Champions League, regardless of Trapp's performance. Is again up until Friday he'd done very well in the league, but his Champions League experience versus that of Sirigu, there's no comparison. Sirigu's been with this team now. This is his third or fourth season, I can't remember. But he's got plenty of Champions League experience, and he should be allowed to continue to do that. It's the same reason that Casillas was continuing to be given opportunities at Real Madrid.
I think Philip made an excellent point a minute ago that regardless of if Sirigu was supposed to be the Champions League goalkeeper, now the talk will turn to it's Kevin Trapp being dropped, even if that was always the plan. And
yeah, and even if Blanc goes out in the press conference and says, "Yeah, but I always wanted to play Sirigu in the Champions League," people are just not going to buy it. They're just going to say, "Okay, of course he's going to say it now," but he should have said it. He should have said it before. So it really puts him in a very delicate situation if he wanted to play Sirigu in the Champions League only.
It's a strange one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Eric made an excellent point earlier about Alfonso Areola being allowed to go out on loan and signing Trapp. It was a little bit of a surprise, and although he was a former under-21 goalkeeper, he is 25 now, so he's at the age where he probably wants to be playing regular football, hence probably why he was given those sort of assurances to join PSG. So, Eric, do you think that, regardless of Trapp's talents, do you think that was a bad move?
From what I've seen so far, I think Areola is a better keeper, and I think he is PSG's long-term answer. And I don't think he's 2 years younger. I don't see what this move does for Trapp in his career. I think he made a mistake. He's not, like I said, he's not a bad keeper, but I don't see him being the long-term answer ahead of both Sirigu and Areola going forward. This move kind of came out of the blue. You look at the likes of players like Cech, for example, that had been linked with PSG in the summer. That seemed like more of the type of keeper that would have the experience necessary to challenge Sirigu, and instead we have a young keeper coming in who's, and what does that also say to Areola? I mean, who's done well in his loan spells at Lens and Bastia. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me from a lot of angles.
Do you think the move, Philip, pretty much forces Areola out of the club at some point? Can you see a way of him staying unless maybe Sirigu leaves?
I think it'll be. I think he will probably find a club that wants his service, a bit like Thibaut Courtois. When Chelsea kept loaning him season after season to Atletico Madrid. Areola has really not played that many games for PSG in his entire career, and he'll just want a starting place because he's probably France's most talented up and coming keeper. Well, when I say up and coming, I mean when keepers have maybe come to maturity a bit later because they've got less of a chance to play games. But he's extremely talented and he shouldn't be on the bench, not at that age. I mean, when you're 25 and you're extremely talented, you just don't sit on the bench waiting for your chance and play a couple of cup games a season. And he's got every right to go on loan wherever he's playing, and he's not playing at bad clubs. Villarreal is a good club, and he's going to get much experience. And I think at some point, maybe next summer, he'll be sold, because PSG just bought Trapp. They've got Sirigu. I think Duches is still at the club. I'm not sure. That's already three keepers who, on paper, look to be in front of Areola. Now, I'm not in Blanc's mind, but if I were Areola, I would leave.
It presents an interesting case, and I will give Trapp some backing. I've watched him quite a few times for Frankfurt over the last couple of seasons, and he is a really, really consistent keeper, and it's very, very out of character, the actions of the weekend, and I think he will bounce back to be a really top player for Paris Saint-Germain. But we will move on and talk about one of our favourites, Marseille. He
Ah.
hit he hit another bunch of goals at home against Bastia, with Roman Amasondrini really shining with 2 goals in a 4-1 win. Eric, is the winger back to that form that we saw back at Rennes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've talked about Alessandrini at length on this program. I've written about him as well for the site. He's a confidence player, and the treatment that he received from Bielsa last season, I think, really sapped that confidence. No matter how well he did as a substitute or in the odd start, he just couldn't seem to get into the team ahead of Tovan, at least not on a regular basis. And we didn't see him at his best last season. But I think that now that he's been given free reign to be a week in week out starter for Marseille, we're going to see him come back to his best, especially playing in this system that seems like it's evolved a little bit to a 4-3-3. He's going to have a little bit more attacking intent and freedom going forward. Can really bring the best out of him. He also, in addition to the confidence he's going to get from match time, I think we've talked a little bit as well about Michel's positive attitude. He's going to encourage these attacking players to go forward and to get the goals that they need. Marseille aren't going to be the most defensively solid team, so the more free-flowing and exciting an attack they can be, that's going to be incredibly helpful. And they're going to need all that front three, but Alessandrini in particular, because he's the most experienced, to be putting the ball in the back of the net.
Philip, what did you think to Alessandrini at the weekend?
Yeah, he looked like a key play of the night for me. Marseille really do look like a team. Michel has them set up like a team who seem to be very comfortable playing beatable side, shall we say, at home, and not having too much trouble of it. We had 6-0 against Troyes, and now we got 4-1 against Bastia, who are not since the sacking of Makelele, we're not an easy side to score against. I mean, of course, if you have Ibrahimovic in your side, it does help. But Marseille do make it look quite easy, especially in the second half. Yeah, to me, Alessandrini was absolutely key to that. And I completely agree with Eric that under Bielsa, what happened to him was simply put completely unfair. That he was able to play, wasn't given his chance for some reason, and now he's under new management. It's his chance to shine. And to me, he really will be key to Marseille's season. What kind of season Marseille is going to have? Is he going to play on Thursday at Groningen? I don't know. I personally think he should be saved the trouble for the league, because he is going to be probably Marseille's most important player this season in terms of attacking creativity.
I think that's an excellent point, Philip, and it's great to see Alessandrini really back into the driving seat, where Michy Batshuayi has had his critics and many questioning whether he could really lead the line on his own for Marseille, but he scored 3 and 5 and has got 10 of his 18 shots so far in the league on target. Eric, has he impressed you leading the line on his own?
Yeah, again, let's go back to Michel and the confidence and positivity that he's instilling in this young team. We saw Batshuayi being an effective weapon off the bench behind Gignac last year, coming in and scoring goals at a really impressive rate. There's still going to be some bumps and bobbles along the way as this young player is, still growing in confidence and, learning what it takes to lead the line in Ligue 1 against, defenses that are often, physical and fast and daunting in a lot of ways. But, the more he scores, the more his confidence is going to continue to grow, and the more effective of a weapon he can be. I mean, I think that he's certainly got every chance in the world to be a 15 or 20 goal scorer this season, and I'd be very surprised if he weren't knocking about the top 10 in the goal scoring charts come the end of the season. He's got all the physical tools, be it hold up play, shooting. He's got decent pace for his size. to be a top level striker for Marseille.
What do you think, Philip? Batshuayi impressed you?
For his age, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think he'll be able to last all the season up front on his own, especially with all the European competitions. Again, it depends what kind of team Michel lines up for the Europa League, how he wants to play it. Does he just want to give you such chance in Europa League, and just have six games and then focus on the league? And he'd be quite. It would be fair enough of him to be doing that, given that Marseille are winning their home games quite easily. The only thing that's missing is now grabbing a few points on the road, and I really have no idea where they're going to finish. It could really go anywhere, but at home they really look like they have not too much trouble creating chances. We've seen Cabella miss a chance. People say it was a sitter, but it was a bit more difficult to score than the commentators said it was. Quite a few chances opened up in the first half, and the only goals they scored was actually from a goalkeeping error. Well, maybe not an error, but misjudgment from some kind of a lobbed shot by Mendy. I think if the chances do come Batshuayi's way, he'll be able to grab 10, 15 goals this season in the league. But injuries do happen, and hopefully he doesn't get one.
That's the real worry, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
But he has impressed so far, and he's impressed me.
But if he doesn't get injured, I can see 15 goals for him. Yeah.
Yeah, and talking about the goals, yesterday there was some blinder from Benjamin Mendy, wasn't there, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably goal of the season so far. That was, well, I don't know, DRI too. I mean, Marseille are turning them out.
Well, I would put Diawara much higher than Mendy's actually.
Wow, the shape on that, Philip. If you watch the replay, the angle from behind, the way that dips, that's a really nice shot.
Yeah. He's caught it very, very well, I think. But
still think the Basel goalkeeper should have got a touch on that. It wasn't. It was quite. Actually, most people I've talked to were like, yeah, the goalkeeper probably should have done better with that one. Whereas Diawara was just a scorcher. But both of them will be quite good. I actually my personal favourite at this moment in time is Claudio Bovu's goal at Caen, which is just amazing.
I think that's my favourite as well at the moment. But take nothing away from Mondi, he doesn't get many.
No, of course not.
The real question though is, Alessandrini and Batshuayi have impressed and have started scoring. Are those two enough to replace the goals they've lost in the likes of Ayew and Gignac and Payet over the summer, Eric?
Let's not sell Remy Cabella short either. He's shown on numerous occasions, particularly his last season before leaving Newcastle at Montpellier, that I think he scored 13 goals that season as well. So with that front three of Batshuayi, Cabella, and Alessandrini, you've probably got somewhere between 30 and 40 goals if each player is playing to their potential. So I wouldn't say that Marseille are going to struggle for goals. It just depends on a couple of things. I mean, number one, what's the objective for this team? Return to the Champions League, return to the European places. It's tough to say at this point, with the uneven start they've had to the season. So we've kind of got to look at that and see what the team's objectives are. And the second thing is, as I said, I don't see this team winning a lot of matches, 1-0. So, they're going to need goals from somewhere. This is going to be a team that's going to pour it on and score a lot of goals rather than being defensively sound. I mean, they've got Nicola Nkulu is one of the league's best defenders, but next to him, Karim Rekik looked decent, but is still very young. So there's going to be some growing pains. Also, with defensive midfield, that's still sort of shaking itself out. So yeah, I think that in addition to the two players we've talked about extensively, look at the likes of Cabella and also Bouna Sarr and George Kevin Nkudu are going to have to play a fairly large part, whether it's in Europe or in the league. So I'd like to see 5 or 10, well, maybe not 10 goals, but perhaps 5 goals from each of them, and allow these young players to continue to develop and get some confidence. But those main three players that are going to have to be where the goals are coming from Marseille.
What do you think is going to happen next Sunday against Lyon?
Scoreless draw.
Yeah, me too.
It's building
Yeah.
up for that, isn't it?
Well, I don't know.
Even last season with the teams both that game was pretty bad tempered. I'm thinking of the draw near the end of the season where they're throwing stuff on the pitch and they had that late dismissal from Morel. I mean, just a really nasty, chippy game. And although there's a lot of turnover in both squads, it's still going to be that rivalry with both teams, really having it in for each other. And I don't see it being, free-flowing attacking football from either side.
You've got so much things going on off the pitch before kickoff. You've got Valbuena and Morel returning to the Velodrome, and it'll be interesting to hear the Marseille faithful's reaction to Valbuena coming back. And you've got, of course, both chairmen who absolutely love each other. It's almost becoming the biggest rivalry in French football. I mean, exaggerating, of course, but they really, and even the two sets of supporters, they really do can't stand each other. And this Olas has a lot to answer for is very much responsible for that. But if anything, I can actually see Marseille winning this because Lyon are having trouble scoring, and they seem to be really good at home. Seem to be really confident, and I mean, why not? And if they do win, this sends a really big message to Lyon, who need to wake up very, very fast if they want to compete at the very top. It'll be a good experience, and especially since both sides, Lyon are playing in Belgium at La Gantoise on Wednesday, Marseille are playing in Holland. It'll be interesting to see how both Fournier and Michel set up their teams in midweek so as to not lose the games, but I think next Sunday's game is very much in the back of their minds, even though it is Europe and it is important.
Well, I mean, Lyon need 3 points on Wednesday. If they've got a good, I mean, with Zenit, we'll talk about this more, but with Zenit, with ABB announcing that he's leaving come the end of the season, that's a club that's very unsettled, and if Lyon have every chance to advance, but 3 points against Ghent is a must on Wednesday for them. So I think they're gonna put out their strongest team on Wednesday, and whatever happens against Marseille happens.
Certainly going to be an interesting, fiery affair, I think, with all the players returning to Marseille in that one. That'll be very fun to watch. We move on to Lyon's opponents on the weekend, Lyon, and they're a real oddity at the start of the season. With 5 games in, they've got 4 points, 1 goal scored, and only 1 conceded. So make of that what you will, gentlemen. What have you made of Lyon under René Girard so far, Philip?
And the new management, it's been interesting. It is Renard, yeah.
It's Renard, yeah. I would do that, wouldn't I? Yeah, under Renard, yeah.
It's loads of new players from Ligue 2. It's been quite interesting to see, and you can see he's trying lots of different formations. He played a 3-4-3 against at Lyon, and Lille are they're quite solid. They're quite physical. They did lots and lots of fouls in the first half against Lyon. And they just want to be solid. I think that Renard is achieving the solid part of his project. But he hasn't yet decided what his best pairing is. He just got Benzia from Lyon, and he hasn't really decided what his starting 11 is. And I don't think he even knows what formation he wants to use week in, week out. But like I said at the very first show of the season, I think he'll have it sorted out by end of October, November. something like that. And then goals will start to fly in. They've got experienced players in Mavuba. They look extremely motivated, and they've got a good youngsters who go quite fast on the wing and up front. I actually quite rate Guirassy. I think if he's given a few games, he'll excel. And they've got very experienced defenders like Renato Sivelli, and the goalkeeper is pretty much one of the best in the country. So yeah, it's gonna be a solid season. Probably not the most spectacular side to watch this season, but they're going to be hard to beat, like they proved on Saturday.
Do you think they're a work in progress still, Eric?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I agree with Phil. The defense in particular has been really good. Savelli, I really like watching him play. I had sort of forgotten about him since he'd gone away. I think it was to Turkey, and now he's back in Ligue 1. But, in addition to his size and his presence, he just brings a real nastiness. He always just seems to be knocking people around and, playing right on the edge of, being dismissed. And I think that, he's really added a real grit and drive and aggression to the way that Lille operate in defense, and I really like that. So the defense, not a problem. Again, Enyama's, as you rightly said, one of the best keepers in France, still tremendous. But I really, really have to question the way Renard is operating going forward. It seems like right now, Lille are overly reliant on the likes of Boufal and Eric Botiak, Sofiane Boufal and Eric Botiak going forward. Both these players, are tremendously talented. Boufal was, easily the signing of the winter window in Ligue 1. The way that he contributed to Lille's push for European qualification in the second half of last year was really impressive. His ability on the ball is, bordering on world class, and he's still young enough to improve on that. Botiak's a new signing from Nice in the summer window, and he's obviously a very tremendous player as well, a good scorer, good dribbler of the ball, fairly creative as well. But I don't really see how the two of them work together, unfortunately. Like I said, both exciting attacking players, but they don't necessarily dovetail it into the same tactical formation, because they both like to come inside and have a free role, and their communication, the way that they link with each other is still a little bit lacking at this point. I'm not saying it can't improve, but if you're reliant on them to be the driving creative and goal scoring force for you, which it seems to be the case at the time or at present, I really question how much longer can this team afford to wait before this thing starts to pass them by. I mean, continuing to get scoreless draws and losing the odd match 1-0 or winning the odd match 1-0 isn't European form. And I think for me, a club the size of Lille should be realistically expecting to be in or around those European places. The other thing, transfer policy, the strikers that they brought in, I'm thinking of Baptiste Guillaume, Serhou Guirassy, Yacine Benzia, and Talo. They're one or the other. Where with Guillaume and Guirassy, you have this bigger, bulkier player who can kind of be a hold-up hub, if you will, and be able to just distribute the ball back to the likes of a Botiak or Boufal moving forward into the area, but they're not goal scorers. And the flip side to that's kind of a smaller, faster winger come striker in the person of Benzia and Talo. But the issue for me there is that neither of those strikers are the type of striker that's gonna score a lot of goals. But they also are so dissimilar. The two pairs of strikers are so dissimilar in their styles that I think to make a substitution that's not like for like, for example, Benzia coming on at the weekend, I think necessitates what's too big of a leap for Lille to take tactically, because you have to you have to really think about how the players operate in wide areas and as strikers, be it with Benzema and Tallo, or to be this more stationary target man, and it really changes the way that Lille approach their attack. And I don't necessarily see how either of that type of striker, be it a target man or a smaller, faster player, really get the best out of Buffon or Botiak for that matter either. There's certainly a very interesting aggregation of young players here, but I don't necessarily see how this attack has any sense of cohesion at present. And I'm just worried about how long that's going to take to happen. And I think if this gets 10 a dozen games and matches into the season, Lille are going to be too far off the pace of where they should be. And for me, that's competing for Europe.
So how do you solve a problem like scoring goals, really? It's 3 games in, they didn't score a goal, and you think that first goal against, I think it was lose the previous weekend, I think, you think the floodgates would open, but nothing happens against Lyon, and never
Well,
quite
Buffon's
looked like
suspended,
happened.
so
Yeah.
where's the creativity coming from? They've been overly reliant on him thus far.
We questioned this during the transfer window, really. Philip, where are these goals going to come from?
I think you need to understand that Lille was so negative and boring last season, and it's going to take a few months to get excitement into the whole place. Like I said, he bought lots of players, and he's still working out what the best position of each player is. I don't see that being a problem again in a few months' time. I think that Benzia, I'm really not sold on Botiak. I'm sorry to say. I think I've said it before on this show. Really not sold on Botiak. Really not impressed. But Buffon is a very, very talented prospect. I think Guirassy, if you give him the chances, he'll do well. Probably more against the lesser sides. There's lots of creativity. I actually thought Tello did quite well against Lyon. Had a shot well saved by Lopez. No, I don't see that in the long run over the season. I don't see that being a problem. I can name you probably 10 to 15 sides who will have more problems than Lille scoring those chances, but I don't think the scoring is the problem right now. It's he creating, but those things take time. I mean, they sold lots of players, they bought lots of players, they have a new manager, a new identity, and it's going to take a few months. But I'm quite certain that they're probably not going to end up scoring as many goals as PSG, Marseille, or Lyon. Even though I can see Lyon having a bit of trouble scoring lots of goals. No, I think they'll be fine come November.
It's an interesting one. At least Lille fans can be safe in the fact they've got an absolutely fantastic keeper that will win their team points on his own sometimes, I think, and showed it again at the weekend. We'll move on to the Champions League and Europa League group stages will start this week. We'll start with the Premier competition with both PSG and Lyon in action. We'll start with the French champions as they host Zlatan's favourite side, Malmo. How do we see this one going, Philip?
On Tuesday?
Yes.
I would say 5-0. The poor Swedish home team of Zlatan will probably suffer the wrath of this 2-2 draw suffered against Bordeaux. No, I don't see I don't see much drama happening there, unfortunately.
Eric, do you give Malmo any chance?
If this match were in Sweden, I might. PSG are still sort of shaking off their injuries. I'm thinking about Zlatan and Pastore in particular. Di Maria is still being bedded in. Cavani's had a decent start to the season domestically, but is still somewhat mercurial in terms of how well he's able to score for PSG. And Malmo have shown, particularly against a somewhat woeful Celtic, I'll admit, that they can put the ball in the net. But being that it's in Paris and they're the crowd's going to be excited to have the Champions League back. I would agree with Philip. That being said, though, I would agree that a 4-0 or 5-0 scoreline may be necessary. If winning this group could very well come down to goal differential, particularly if PSG and Real Madrid do end up splitting their encounters. So it would be nice for PSG to record a really resounding result, not only for the team's own confidence, but for what could come into play, come early December when the group stage is concluded.
Especially when Real have a player that scores 5 goals in one game.
I can just see the general opinion not really caring whether PSG win 1-0 or PSG win 5-0. I can just see everybody saying, well, it's only Malmo, so whatever's the result, PSG it's not really going to matter. Whether they win by whatever margin they win. And if they draw, I think, yes, they'll get murdered in the press as you would expect nowadays.
Yeah, Aurier is missing this match too, by the way. He's
right.
tweeting about a referee in last year's competition.
So Van der Veel's first start, or maybe Marquinhos?
I'd rather see Marquinhos personally.
Well, me too, actually. We talked about Holland last week, and Van der Veel has not really endeared himself to anyone, really. Not been very good for PSG. I would actually buy a right back if I were Blanc as well.
I think you mentioned it a minute ago, Eric, that Zlatan's not fully fit, but I think if he can at least stand on one leg, I think he'll play that one. If with Malmo coming to town, move on to Lyon as they head to Belgium to take on Genk. What do we think about that one, Eric? Do you think they can bounce back from their draw against Lyon?
Yeah, I mean, Ghent are dealing with some injuries. They have little to no Champions League experience on the team. This is the first time they've ever won the title in Belgium. I just think that the experience that Lyon have in the Champions League, I'm looking at Bedemo, Gonalon, Bisevac if he starts, Mathieu Valbuena in particular. There's Lacazette. There's just too much experience and talent on this team for me to see anything but a Lyon win. Again, the team can't afford any slip-ups, so they haven't shown themselves, aside from Nabil Fekir, to be exactly prolific in scoring this season. So, there's a risk that they, will end up with a scoreless draw or something like that, but they really need to get 3 points. Like I was saying earlier, I think Valencia have to be the prohibitive favorites in the group based on the way they took apart Monaco in the playoff rounds. But, it's, for me, totally a toss-up between Zenit and Lyon, even with Fekir's injury. So they really need to lay down a strong marker in this first match and get 3 points. Hopefully their experience will allow them to do that.
Philip, do you think they've got enough to see off Ghent?
I'm really not sure. Yeah, it would have been good for them to win against Lille just for the confidence. But yeah, I can see a scoreless draw. Yeah, I can see it being 1-1. I don't know much about Genk, but any squad any team, any club in the Champions League at home are going to give it everything, and if you're not 100% confident in what you do, it's going to be tough. So yeah, I can see 1-1. Yeah, unfortunately.
I think it's certainly going to be interesting, especially Lyon playing it away from home for the first Champions League game. But I'll move on to probably the most interesting tie out of the two competitions involving the French teams, as Bordeaux host Liverpool, which should be a really interesting one, Eric, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think that Bordeaux are really starting to come into their own. I had worried a little bit about how much Mariano had given to the team going forward, but we've got two young, exciting right backs that seem to be ready to take his mantle in Gajic and Gilbert, and I think that Liverpool, especially with the wobbles that they've had in defense so far, are ripe for the taking. I could easily see this match going 2-1 for the hosts. Kazri, Saive, Maurice Bellet have all started the season pretty well. There's a lot of options going forward for them. And of course, Sertic is still injured and is going to continue to be a big miss for this team. But I think that Liverpool's on even start to the season means that Bordeaux have every chance to win this match, and hopefully they're able to turn in a good performance and turn some heads in England. I think that you know we constantly hear it from the likes of Football Weekly and any other number of British-based journalists and fellow podcasts that Ligue 1 totally gets dumped on. But I think this is the sort of chance to show what the league's made of. Bordeaux are a quality team. Sagnol's one of the best young managers in the game, and to get one over on supposed wonderkind Brendan Rodgers and his hundreds of millions of pounds spent would really be a good marker for the league, and it would be a positive thing. So, and the opportunity is there for me, with the way that both teams have started the season.
I think it'll be a game of very few goals, few chances, and few goals. But out of the two teams, I can see Bordeaux being the most likely to score, just for the sheer motivation of the whole thing. I mean, I think those youngsters are really happy to be playing in the Europa League, whereas Liverpool, as we all know, their goal is to finish in the top four and play in the Champions League. And when they're not doing that, you can just see that from the British side. With West Ham and Southampton being knocked out of the Europa League qualifiers. Well, actually, Southampton was more about not knowing what to do to get through. But you definitely sense that West Ham really did not care. And I get that impression from most British clubs. And Bordeaux are a very hard side to score against. And I would say, if I had to make a bet, I would say 1-0 to Bordeaux. Some guy like Kazri scoring.
Well, it's interesting to think that Liverpool were woeful for 60, 70 minutes at the weekend, and it's a great chance. You pulled up a great point there, Eric, that sometimes Ligue 1's laughed at a little bit, and there was a really interesting stat for me in the Football League tonight, which is the British highlight show for the Football League, that the Championship spent £100 million on transfers in the summer, and Ligue 2 didn't even manage $1 million. So the golfing quality, even just in the second tier, is.
Just one more point. Okay. I also wanted to say too. I mean, it also seems to me that we've talked about how in years past French teams have sort of taken a flyer on the Europa League and how that's hurt the coefficient, the league coefficient, that is, be it Saint-Etienne or Lyon or Nice exiting in the playoff stages of the Europa League in recent years. But it seems like all the teams are, especially Bordeaux, are taking the competition a lot more seriously this year. And I think that shouldn't be overlooked either. That, I'm not necessarily saying that Sagnol's going to prioritize the Europa League over the league, but he's certainly going to send out strong teams. Bordeaux have this new stadium. They want to keep European football there because it excites the crowd. And we saw that in their playoff and third round qualifying encounters, that Sagnol's putting out strong sides. He sees the value of this competition in gaining experience. I mean, you look at the success Lyon had in the previous two seasons in the Europa League, not last year, but the previous 2 years, and I think that really served as a catalyst to develop a lot of their younger players.
Yeah, I mean. Now, I get your point, but it'll always come down to the February-March period where some clubs will still be in the Europa League. It'll be either by qualifying via the group stage or finishing third in the Champions League, and it will all depend on where they are in the league. What can they do to save their season or make something of their season or achieve their goal during the season. And ultimately, the league is going to take precedence just like anywhere else, basically. So, I mean, it's great to see so many teams in the Europa League, but once again, I think come March, April, probably March more than April, we'll see very tough trips to Eastern Europe. And that will not be prioritized when they're playing Ligue 1 games at the weekend, unfortunately.
Very true. I'll give very quick predictions for the last two then. So I'm going to start with you, Eric. What do you think for Marseille Groningen? Very quickly.
0-0 0-1. Marseille with a narrow away victory.
Philip, what are you
And
going for?
1-2, same.
Okay, and then Saint Etienne Rosenborg, Eric.
1-1.
Philip.
Probably 2-1 to Anderlecht.
Ooh.
Oh, sorry, shit.
Wrong game.
2-1 to Saint-Etienne, sorry.
Yeah, Saturday. Yeah. Much better prediction with a team not even in the game. We'll finish off this week very quickly talking about a team that's really impressed at the very start of the season in Stade Rennais, who are currently second in League 1. They've won their last 4 games. Eric, how impressed have you been with Philippe Montagnier turning this team around?
He's finally done it after
Yeah, took a while.
2 seasons of shuffling the pack eternally. Yeah, what he's done tactically. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago on the site about this. If you want to track it down, to get the best out of the players he's got on hand. Ludovic Ball was a great signing in the summer from Lens. He's looked great, shuttling up and down that wing. Steven Moreira is the other wing back on the right side. Hadn't really been able to get into the team ahead of Romain Danze at right back. But now playing as a wing back, he's given a little bit more freedom going forward and is really blossoming. You've got this really dynamic front three. We're talking about CO, Entep, and one of Pedro Enrique or Camille Grosicki on the right. So yeah, this team and also a 3-man defense is going to help protect Sylvain Armand a little bit better. He's older and not quite as fast as he used to be. We've got the new signing Pedro, and as well as Mexer in defense, Yakuba Silla and Gelson Fernandez in holding midfield. Although Decore played at the weekend, just really getting the best out of all the players in the squad, and a really wonderful counter-attacking approach. And you've got pace to burn up front, solid defense. Obviously we want Benoit Costil to come back soon and at the top of his game, but without Europe to distract them, Rennes look as good as any team in the league, especially with the way that Monaco and Lyon are struggling at present to score.
Philip, what do you think to Rennes' start to the season?
They're definitely going to be the party crashers early on when teams like Lyon and Marseille are still struggling to get to grips with all these injuries and squad reshuffles. It's a good squad. It's quite exciting for Rennes, and they won some kind of a derby at Nantes. Two towns are miles apart, but it's still some kind of a Brittany derby, and they'll be quite happy to win that and to keep on the heels of the top 3. I can't see it really lasting in the long term, but with 5 games on, they're only a point behind PSG, and all credit to them. And I think it'll take a while for the others to catch up with them, but they will eventually. I can see a top 6 finish though.
And it's a really interesting turnaround, really. Philippe Montagnier, as Eric sort of pointed out straight away, it's taken him a few years to really achieve that promise that he showed at Real Sociedad, where he took them to the Champions League. But he's got some really talented players there, Tep especially. Castile.
Now.
Yeah, exactly. And Castile, when fit, is a terrific goalkeeper. Mexer had a really good game at the weekend as well, and deservedly is getting some plaudits for some excellent performances. And I've been really impressed by Kamil Grosicki as well when he's been playing. He put in quite a good performance for Poland in the 2 games they had in the international break, and him coming to the fore, especially with Pedro Enrique being a bit hit and miss sometimes. I think they're starting to find their feet. Eric, do you think they could really challenge for a Europa League spot?
I think the Europa League, the way they started the season, is a minimum expectation. Unless Lyon and Monaco get on their proverbial horses, I think Rennes have a decent chance at finishing 3rd and being in the Champions League next year. Barring injury, but even with injuries, this is a squad that has quite a bit of depth. Like I said, now that Entep's back and fighting form, and same with Decore. Those are 2 of the more exciting young players in the season. Young players in the league last year. I think Scott, I'm not saying Rennes are going to challenge for the title, but aside from that, anything from second on down is totally a realistic possibility.
It's interesting that thinking and Tep's only been back for a game and a half. It's really shows the strength of depth if they have got it, especially out wide.
Yeah, it's still like I said, it's a good squad. They can they've got some depth in their squad, but then again, I don't think I would I wouldn't say they'd finish higher than sixth or maybe fifth. I would think that it's going to be a long season for them, and they may be probably the best of maybe a best of the rest kind of season for me.
Well, I think it'll be a real water break next week when they face a side that can't score but can defend in Lille. So it'll be an interesting one at least there. That will be all from us this week. My thanks to Eric and Philip again for joining us. Thanks to everyone at home for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.